In this video, we will revisit the process of onboarding an application to the Boardwalk Velocity server. We'll continue using the same transaction file we've been using to demonstrate Velocity's configuration functionality. This time, we're expanding our scope to include the two cuboids, drop-down list and EOM report, along with our transaction cuboid. Additionally, we'll incorporate the pivot table, TXN pivot table, and the graph, TXN graph, that we've previously created. As a fun twist, we've decided to name our file Acme Undertakings. Despite the playful name, we're still staying true to our Acme branding, within that the training category, i.e., Neighborhood 0 and Neighborhood 1 respectively. During this session, we'll delve into the upfront configuration options, considering the requirements and strategizing our approach. Once the application is successfully onboard the Velocity server, we'll address any remaining configurations necessary to bring us back to where we left off with the Acme Transactions application. Before we begin, let's hide our drop-down lists sheet as we don't want the end users to see this. We have saved our application workbook in a folder called Acme Undertakings. We will now close all open workbooks. Log in to the portal and download the Accelerator template. Open the downloaded file. Enable editing. And now we are ready to onboard our application. Let's validate the application. Navigate to the folder where the application file is stored and click OK. Accelerator is now validating the application and bringing data about the application into the workbook. Let's keep the role, workbook name, access type, and workbook details as is and focus on the workbook/worksheet definitions. The workbook column lists all the workbooks that are part of our application. In our case, there is only one. However, had there been more, they would have been listed here. The worksheet column lists the sheets that are contained in the workbook listed in the column workbook. The column state indicates if the corresponding sheet is visible or hidden in the source workbook. Notice our drop-down list is shown as hidden, since we hid the sheet earlier. Worksheet protected indicates if the corresponding worksheet is protected or not. Prior to onboarding, we should unprotect the sheets. VBA protected column indicates the state of the VBA code in our source file. We could unprotect the VBA code before proceeding. The column formula dependency indicates if there are formulas in this sheet that are dependent on other workbooks. Export yes/no column indicates if the sheet is going to be exported and is dependent on the value of worksheet classification column. Number of rows indicates the number of rows of data in the corresponding sheet. Number of columns indicates the number of columns of data in the corresponding sheet. The export start row indicates the row number from which the export of data is going to start. The export start column indicates the column number from which the export of data is going to start. Access type column indicates whether the sheet is read-only or editable and takes a value from a drop-down menu. Worksheet classification indicates if the sheet is a data table, i.e., cuboid, a pivot, a form, or a static sheet. The default value is cuboid and would need to be changed for non-data tables. When the value is changed from cuboid to another value, the export column changes from a yes to no. We should indicate that our pivot table and graph are not cuboids but are pivots in the worksheet classification column, using the drop-down options available. Notice that the export yes/no column values change to no for these two sheets. Now let's focus on the next set of configurations available, i.e., cell-level right-click menus. We learned how to configure these using the Velocity Design Framework, right-click menu, View Edit Items. These can be configured during the onboarding process too. We need to only configure these options for data that will be cuboid, hence we will ignore the last two row values. While onboarding, Accelerator will also ignore these two rows. In a previous video, we thoroughly explored the functionalities of the items listed in the Boardwalk cell menu. When a yes is indicated in the column, it signifies that the item will appear in the right-click cell menu by default. However, there are a few exceptions to this rule. Some options have been set as defaults to no. These include Refresh Workbook. This option refreshes all the cuboids within the workbook. Submit Workbook. This action submits all the cuboids within the workbook. Redownload Workbook. This feature functions similarly to the download button in the Boardwalk menu, retrieving all the cuboids from the velocity server. Any of these values can be changed by clicking on the cell and selecting the value from the drop-down list. Based on our configuration selections, this is what the right-click Boardwalk cell menu will look like. Now let's focus on the next set of configurations available, i.e., row-level right-click menus. As in the case of cell menu, we only need to configure these options for data that will be cuboid, hence we will ignore the last two row values. In a previous video, we thoroughly explored the functionalities of the items listed in the Boardwalk row menu. When a yes is indicated in the column, it signifies that the item will appear in the right-click cell menu by default. Any of these values can be changed by clicking on the cell and selecting the value from the drop-down list. Based on our configuration selections, this is what the right-click Boardwalk cell menu will look like. In our earlier video, for our transaction worksheet, we had configured Insert Row at Cursor and Insert Multiple Rows at Cursor, so let's indicate that by changing the no to a yes. Also, we had configured Copy Row below the cursor, so let's change that too. This is how the Insert Row and Copy Row options will show up for the user. The last section pertains to custom macros. These would be macros that you want to add functionality that is above and beyond the available configuration options. Pre-submit macro will execute before the actual submit of the data to the velocity server. Post-submit macro will execute after the data has been submitted to the velocity server. Similarly, pre-refresh macros will run before the data is refreshed from the velocity server, and post-refresh macros will run after the database has been refreshed from the velocity server. The onBWS load macro runs at the beginning of the worksheet data download. The clear macro runs when one is clearing the template of any data. If you know you have a need for these macros, you can include those macros here. The name of the macros will need to go here, in the cell under the desired column and in the same row as the cuboid. Ensure the macros are part of your workbook that is being uploaded. Now that we are done with our configuration, let's export our application. Click OK to continue. Select the training neighborhood. Click OK to continue. The application is now being uploaded to the velocity server. Please wait till the status bar shows the upload is at 100%. Any interaction with the application might produce not so desirable results. The application upload is now complete. Click on OK to continue. Next steps are to verify the uploaded application. Let's verify this by going to the portal and checking for the uploaded application. Notice that the application has been uploaded. If we click on the Show Template button, there will be no template. This is because we have to assign this to the role we belong to. To do that, we will need to download the Solution Manager. Open the downloaded file. From the Boardwalk menu, click on Download Data. Wait for the download to complete, and then proceed to click on AD role mapping icon in the Solution Manager section. On the next pop-up, select NH Level 0 as Acme, NH Level 1 as Training, EUC name should be Acme Undertaking. The role should also be Acme Undertaking. As for LDAP group, this would the group that you have been assigned to. Enter first 3 or 4 letters of your group in the LDAP group lookup box and click on Find. A list of groups will be presented. Select your group from there and click on OK. And then close the window. You will notice a new row has been added on the top for our application. Next, submit the sheet from the Boardwalk menu. Add a transaction comment and click on OK. You can now close the Solution Manager workbook. Click on Yes on the next pop-up. Let's log out of our portal and log back in. Select our business unit, which is training, followed by selecting our EUC, which is Acme Undertakings, then click on Show Template button. Our Acme Undertakings workbook is now available for download. Click on the download link. Click on the Open File link to open the workbook. This is how the workbook currently looks for the user. Download the data from the server by clicking on Download from the Boardwalk menu. The workbook is downloaded. We see our sheets EOM report and transactions. And we also see our pivot table and TXN graph sheets too. And our hidden sheet drop-down lists is still hidden. To summarize, we did a deep dive into the Accelerator template and understood which parameters could be configured within the Accelerator so that we can avoid doing that afterwards. To work further on the configuration, we would need to switch to the developer mode. In our next video, we will explore adding columns to our existing cuboids.